Panera now delivers, so you can order good, clean food right to your office, or door, or porch, or backyard, or front yard, or apartment, or dorm, or castle, or shop, or worksite, or wherever Panera delivers. For lunch, dinner, and everywhere in between. Click the banner to order or visit PaneraBread.com. Participating locations only. Panera. Food as it should be.
Welcome to Define You Radio, the place to be for real talk and real tips to help you define your personal and professional life. Class is in session with your host, the Southern Belle of Bold, Valencia Griffin-Wallace. Pens and papers ready. Class is now in session.
Hello and welcome to Define You Radio. Classes in session, where you get the life lessons, strategies, and more to teach you how to define life on your own terms. I am your host, the Southern Belle of Bold, Valencia Griffin-Wallace. Make sure you are subscribed and connected to all things Define You, including Define You Movement on Facebook, where classes in session 7 days a week. You can find out more about me, Define You Movement, radio, anything Define You at valenciagwallace.com. Oh, I pulled that off really good, because if you guys listened last week, last Tuesday, I was steadily talking and I was on mute. It was so funny, so I'm proud of myself. So I want to welcome all new listeners. I am a part-time comedian, so you're definitely in for a treat. This month, we are talking about real life. You know, usually, guys, we have a different topic or so on and so forth we're following every month. So this month, we're talking about real life, and tonight's class is in session with Mr. Arnold Brown. He is multilingual. He is a voice actor and so much more. I'm so excited. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all know, like, we most of the time have ladies on the show, so I'm excited. Like, we got a man. Yes, somebody needs to hashtag that. So we're discussing life and diversity and so much more. So classes in session. Get your pens and papers ready. Arnold, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so blessed to be here today.
Yay! Well, I'm excited to have you, and just to kind of tell the audience how we met. It was at a filmmakers meeting, something of that nature that I went to, and I don't know how we started talking, but he has this amazing voice. So when he told me that he's a voice actor, I was like, oh, my gosh, that makes so much sense. Your voice is amazing. Like, I need to probably take some lessons on that one. So besides voice acting, tell the audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I am someone who really loves foreign languages. I love people. And I guess just to kind of give you an example of what that looks like for me, I'm the type of person where if I am going to like a Chinese restaurant, I will be the one to just go in and talk to the waitress or talk to the workers and everybody there that speaks Chinese and just starts talking to them. So I just have a passion for languages and I have a passion for people, and I just enjoy that a lot. Absolutely.
Well, I bet, okay, I have so many questions, but I'm going to try to keep on task. Y'all know my ADD sometimes kicks in the middle of the show, but we're going to try to, I'm doing my best. Where did this fascination with language come from? Because you speak quite a few, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, for me, really, it started way back in 2007. And what's really interesting about this is during that time I was in high school and I was attending Woodlawn High, and I was really into basketball at that time. But something very interesting happened. I remember I was on my way home from a church service, and I was in my car and I was driving, and I was praying. And I said, Lord, whatever you want to do with my life, whatever your will is, I want it. I want it. And it wasn't very long after that, maybe 2 months. It was really within the summer of 2007, I remember that a transition took place. I found myself not wanting to play basketball, like the desire to play basketball totally left me, and a desire to learn Spanish came about. And what's interesting is, and I'll never forget the story, I was in Florida with my parents and my sister at that time and also my cousin. And we were at Universal Studios, and as you probably know, in Florida you have a lot of Latinos there. And
right.
Yeah, so being at that time Universal Studios, and I think it was also the Islands of Adventure there as well, I just remember being surrounded by all of these Spanish people and Spanish-speaking people. And I just remember looking and saying, I want to learn Spanish. And it just happened just like that. It's just that interest was planted and birthed in my spirit just to learn the language. And that's how I began. I began to learn Spanish from my junior year, but of course later on I would begin really in college to begin teaching myself how to speak Spanish, how to speak Portuguese, and several other languages as well.
I have so many questions because I remember in high school taking Spanish and taking French, and I was like, oh, my gosh, no. Like, I was so not ever use this. But honestly, now, now that I'm, like, way past my high school days, I wish I would have learned Spanish, and I know it's, like, not too late. So did you Rosetta Stone it? Like, how did you?
Yeah, well, so here's what's interesting. Like, in high school, so I said basically when that desire to learn Spanish came in my spirit in 2007, I began taking courses that fall of that same year. So for the last 2 years of my high school years, I began to take Spanish. But what I learned, and this is the thing, I learned that, well, you can't really learn. You can learn Spanish in the classroom, but you have to go beyond the classroom, right? You have to really have a motivation to learn the language beyond the classroom because you're going to only learn so much. So what I found myself doing in my college years in 2009, 2 years after my high school years of taking Spanish, I found myself going to the library and just picking up books. I'll never forget, I had my Spanish teacher in college. She gave me a verb book, 501 verbs to learn, and I began teaching myself things like grammar, began teaching myself things like phonetics, and all of these linguistic terms. I just began diving into all of these aspects, and that's really how my ability to speak Spanish began to blossom.
So how many languages do you know?
Well, so I speak Spanish, I can speak Portuguese, Mandarin Chinese, and I've also learned German as well as Russian and several others I've learned just out of curiosity and just pure interest. So, but those 5 languages for sure are the main ones that I find myself speaking quite often. Okay.
So, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I know English and then maybe one other language, I could separate them enough. But being that you know so many, does it sometimes get twisted up in your head and you'll find yourself, because Spanish and French, from what I remember, are very similar.
Right.
From what I remember from my high school classes I halfway slept through. So does it get mixed up in your head where you start, in Spanish and end up in French, so to speak? You know what I'm saying? Because some of those words are very similar.
Right. So I could definitely say Spanish and Portuguese. They're very similar languages. So I do find myself from time to time mixing up those two languages because the verbs and the nouns, everything within it is very similar. But like, and then I'll say this to make a joke, but like seriously, I remember this happened a few times. I may find myself mixing Chinese, maybe like a word in Chinese and then speaking the rest in Spanish. I'll never forget doing that one time. So yes, it can happen a few sometimes, absolutely.
So what is the reaction when you go to, say, like a Chinese restaurant or something like that, and you start talking in their language? Is it like, oh my gosh, like what's the reaction?
First, I love the reaction I get each and every time. But you're right, absolutely. They do. I'll translate what I say, but I'll go to them and I'll be like, hey, 你会说普通话吗? I'll be like, hey, can you speak Mandarin Chinese? And I'm like, hey, and they'll be shocked initially, and then they'll be like, 你可以讲普通话吗? Like, you can speak Chinese? And I'm like, yeah. And so, like, just that moment in time right there just begins to initiate a powerful bond just because of the language. There's so many barriers that can happen between cultures, if there's things that you think about, but just because of the language, being able to initiate a conversation in that person's language, it's like extending a hand and saying, hi, my name is Arnold, and I want to be your friend. It's just powerful. It's powerful.
I could imagine. For my own selfish reasons, I want to learn Vietnamese.
Hey, all right.
So I need you to put that in your arsenal so you could teach me. So,
okay.
Honestly, it might sound a little cliche, but I want to know when I go to the nail shop exactly what they're saying. Because I used to go to this one particular nail shop, and they were Vietnamese, and I went there for like years and years and years, and they would try to teach me words,
right?
Right. But I would remember them while I was there, and then as soon as I leave, I would forget, and then I'd come in there, and then they would say something to me that I'm supposed to know the response to, and I'm like, look, I'm not going to lie, I forgot as soon as I left the door, but I definitely see how that's an advantage, knowing different languages and just being able to maneuver in this world better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I need you to learn Vietnamese. Put that on your 2018 list.
Hey, I'm writing it down now, so I get you.
Okay. But have you ever assumed somebody speaks a language and they don't?
Yes, I have done that a few times. Yes.
So tell me about that experience.
Well, okay, so this just happened. I think it was last week. And I was at work, so I work as an assistant teacher right now, and occasionally the students and I and the teacher, we go to different places, we travel around, and so on this one occasion, we were at the mall, and the mall, they have like different things that you can eat within the food court, and so they have a few Chinese stores or restaurants that you can go to. So, being the person I am and just the passion I have for languages, I skip Cane's and the burger shop, all these different places you will probably go and just went straight to the Chinese restaurant. And but I remember seeing like the people they take your order, and I was getting ready to buy my meal, and I remember talking to the cash register, the person at the cash register. I said, "Hey," and that's when that same line, like, "Do you speak Mandarin? Do you speak Chinese?" And I never forget. She's like, and then she looked to the side. The person she worked with spoke Chinese, but he didn't speak Chinese, and so
Really?
it wasn't like a, oh my gosh, like this is a bad encounter right here. Like I'm not appreciating it.
Right.
But it was actually what I kind of saw within her eyes. It was kind of like, whoa, like
Was
who is this guy? Like,
embarrassment, maybe?
yeah. Well, it was kind of like she was kind of like, huh? Like she was kind of like it was like she couldn't figure out what I was like. The fact that I was speaking Chinese, so it wasn't like she was mad or anything, but she just couldn't respond. But then I asked her. I said, okay, so where are you from? I asked her that in English, and then she told me she was from Burma, and so that's of course a different area in a different country, and I would love to learn more about that culture in that country as well. But yeah, I don't speak the language there, so. But it was an very interesting encounter for sure.
I could imagine my son's best friend since elementary school is half Chinese and half white or Caucasian, whatever the politically correct term is. He's half Chinese American and half Caucasian, but he doesn't know any Chinese because he wasn't raised with that part of his, with any of that side. Like he has no, which kind of sucks because they have such a rich culture and everything, but he really doesn't know anything about the culture besides what any of us could learn on Google, or definitely not the language. And what's crazy is because as he gets older, he looks more and more Chinese versus, when he was younger, you couldn't really, I don't want to say you couldn't tell, but you could tell he was mixed with something. But as he gets older, he definitely looks more Chinese. And I bet he gets that, someone coming and I probably know, I'm going to make him listen to this call so he could at least learn that phrase you said. So,
well, if I can add one thing, if that's okay. Yeah, so I realized earlier I mentioned that when I was in college, I found myself going to the library often, and I did, to borrow books, things like that. But I have to mention this. There is so much power on the Internet. I mean, these days you can literally find, you could type in things like Chinese language into Google, or Korean language, or Spanish language, or Portuguese language. And when you go to Wikipedia, for example, you'll find them kind of going into the details of what the language, the things that you need to kind of learn and master, the principles, right? The principles of the language that you need to understand or at least be aware of. So with that type of thing in mind and just kind of using your own personal experience, your own personal experience from the classroom and your own learning style, you just kind of think about these different things, you can really find yourself learning a language through the Internet. And it's not just teaching yourself, but there's these language exchange websites. Like you can have, I'll just give a website that I use that I found very powerful, and this is for anyone out there who's interested in having a language exchange. If you use the website called Interpals, interpals.net, that's interpals.net. It's a great website. Free. It's absolutely free just to go there and to create an account and begin making friends with people from across the world and then doing language exchange. So, yeah, there's so many ways.
That's on my, I'm not going to sit up here and lie and say that's on my 2018 goal list, but it is on my life. One of my 101 lifetime goals is to learn another language. So it will get done sometime in my lifetime. So
come on. Hey, I like that. You can do it. People have to make different goals, out the box, in the box, all kinds of boxes.
If you had to pick one language that you had to speak the rest of your life,
wow,
what would it be?
Oh, wow.
Only one.
Okay, this is a hard one. I'm like tapping my fingers over here trying to figure this one out. I have to be honest. and this probably is this may be because of my experience and the time that I spent there. And even now, like I'm still involved in the Chinese community, which I'm so grateful for. It's a Chinese church that I'm involved with here, and they've been such a blessing to my life. So if there's any language that I would want to speak for the rest of my life, it would most likely and potentially be Mandarin Chinese.
Okay. I figured you was going to say that. I figured you was going to say that, A, because you dropped some hints right before you said Mandarin Chinese. And, So, which brings me to another question. So, I noticed you say Mandarin Chinese. Are there different versions of Chinese language?
Right. Absolutely. Now, that's a very, very good statement and point to make, because oftentimes those who have an interest in Chinese, let's just say Chinese in general, if they're not careful, especially if they were to do some searching online, they may, if they're not clear on the type of Chinese that they're wanting to learn, they may find themselves accidentally coming across other information that deals with another type of Chinese or another form of Chinese, which would be something like Cantonese. Okay, some people out there are probably really familiar with Cantonese. I know Jackie Chan, that's one of my favorite actors. He's from Hong Kong. He speaks Cantonese, but he also speaks Mandarin. So there's two forms of it. But yes, Mandarin Chinese is considered the standard language of China.
Okay. Is there a big difference between Cantonese and Mandarin Chinese?
There is. So you probably know, like with Chinese, that it's a tonal language. So Mandarin Chinese has 4 tones, and depending on the sources and who you look at, some people would say Cantonese has 6 tones or even potentially 9 tones. And the reason for that, and I believe this is the case, is because of the consonants at the end, that if you kind of look into the details of that. But, yeah, there is a difference between the languages and their pronunciation for sure.
So what do you mean by tones?
Right.
Like what's an example of a tone?
Right. So Mandarin Chinese has 4 tones. This is awesome. I'm loving this. Give it a lesson. This is great. It's great. Mandarin Chinese has 4 tones. It has a straight tone. So, and I love using singing as a way to kind of explain the language, because you can really use music. You can use music to kind of control your voice. And so with Mandarin Chinese, again, it has 4 tones. The first tone is a straight tone. So if you're singing, or if you want to pronounce the straight tone in Mandarin Chinese, I'm going to use the letter A. I'm going to use A, the English alphabet A, and I'm going to just say the straight tone or the first tone in Mandarin, and that's A. Okay, so that's the straight tone. Okay. But then the second tone is a rising tone. So it's like you're raising your voice in the form of a question, and it sounds something like this: Ah. And then the third tone is a dip tone. So some people are probably familiar with Chinese kind of dipping their voice in the language. They probably heard some people sounding like something like that in the language. But that's them pronouncing the third tone, which is more of a dip. So if you're using the A sound, it'll be like and then the last tone, which is the 4th tone in Mandarin Chinese, is a sharp tone. It's more of it's really quick. So if you're tapping a keyboard, it's like you're tapping the note on the piano, and it's just very quick. So it's like ah. So if you put them all together, the first tone, the second tone, the third tone, and the 4th tone, it sounds something like this, all in unison, kind of going together one by one after each other. You have the ah. I'll do it again.
Interesting. I I'm gonna have a special show just for you to just teach us like something simple, because I've always been fascinated for some reason with Chinese culture. Not fascinated enough to learn it, but like, it probably started with the geisha movie. Memoirs of a Geisha, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. Like, I probably would have been one if I was Chinese. Well, not the stuff that they did, but just the whole culture of it. The whole, is that Japanese or Chinese? Am I mixing my nieces? I'm mixing my nieces.
Well, I haven't seen the film, so I don't know, but that's.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna leave that one alone because I think I'm mixing it up. But I know I'll just say I've been fascinated with Asian culture because it is such a rich culture, you know. Yeah. It is. From the geisha, which may or may not be Chinese. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. It may be Japanese. To the dragons. To, of course, Bruce Lee, because I knew one day I was going to marry him, even though he was way older than me. But just that whole, like, I watch a lot of, but I think he was Japanese, I'm not sure. But the whole Ip Man series, I don't know if you watched any of his movies. He was like, he did it, and it's IP Man. And it's like a series of movies, and it's about, the battles between Japanese and Chinese when, one tried to take over the other, and he was like a hero. And it's based on a true story because he was Bruce Lee's teacher. So that's what I was used to. So he taught Bruce Lee Wayne Chun, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, wow. That's
awesome. I know some stuff.
Yeah.
Y'all don't put me in a box.
Really?
Don't put me in a box. So, yeah. But it is very fascinating. If you ever get a chance to watch his movies, this is the guy that taught Bruce Lee. And then when Bruce Lee, wanted to become more Americanized, of course, he actually changed the style up. But this is the creator of that style. So y'all that #classes in session, y'all done learned some stuff. So on with the interview. How did you end up in China? How did that happen?
Oh, my goodness. This one is definitely a story, for sure. And this is a story really dear to my heart, for sure. Let's kind of go back a little bit. So let's go back to 2009. So in 2009, I started teaching myself Spanish. This was in the fall of that year. And then going into 2010, I started teaching myself Portuguese. I really love Brazil, have a heart for Brazil, want to go to Brazil. So that was a passion and something I began to do at that time. But then towards the end of 2010, this was in December, I remember thinking about Mandarin and Chinese at that time and thinking about learning it, because I felt like it was a language that was extremely important and in fact is the world's most spoken language. So that was definitely one of the reasons why I considered learning the language. So let me kind of fast forward. I mean, there's some things that I can say in between that time. But in the summer, so I began learning Mandarin in the December of 2010, began teaching myself, taught myself how to read it, write it, and speak it. And within I say this humbly, but just kind of giving the details of the timeline, it was within a short period of time. But within the summer of 2011, I remember, again, and this is interesting, just kind of noting how I was in the car again, and the Lord spoke to my heart again, or just kind of revealed himself to me at that moment. I was in the car in the summer of 2011. I was praying, just kind of meditating, and I was just thinking about, things in life. And I remember the Lord speaking to my heart very, very clearly. And he said these exact words, and I have them journaled. He said, Arnold, you're going to go to China, and you're not going to have to pay a dime. Zero.
Wow.
and I took it to the bank. I was like, okay, so it was in my spirit when he spoke those words, and I just wrote them down, and I held them dear to my heart. Just held dear the words of God to my heart. And so let's kind of go a couple of months later in that same year of 2011. And interestingly enough, sure enough, an opportunity came. An opportunity for me to go to China to study abroad came about. But check this out. For whatever reason, and I just believed the Lord was working and doing a work in my life, that opportunity was stripped away from me. It was taken away from me at that particular time to go to China. And you can imagine, I was hurt. I was really discouraged. I was like, God, you just spoke to my heart and said that I was going to be able to go to China and not have to pay a dime. And this opportunity came, but it's been stripped away from me. Why? Why did this happen? And so I battled with that, and I was in college. I was in my junior year, and I continued to learn Chinese. I continued to hold on. It was not easy. It was not easy at all, and there's so much I can say in between in that time, but let's fast forward now to 2013. I'm graduating from college. I have a minor in Mandarin Chinese. I have a major in Spanish. That's a blessing, and I thank God for that. And I definitely went through a lot to get that, and so I'm just very grateful to him. But towards the end of that year, towards the end of 2013, and still believing God for his promise, an opportunity came for me to apply for an opportunity. Now, this is where things get really interesting. I applied for a mission program. And as I applied for the mission program, this was for the United Methodist Church at that time, in 2013, and this mission program, the candidate, whoever was selected to be a part of this mission program, it's called Global Mission Fellows, for anybody who's interested in checking it out, for the United Methodist Church. Generation Transformation, that's the name. I applied to the program without being certain that I would be going to China. And the thing, China wasn't really even an option. They had Brazil, they had Germany, they had Europe, they had different parts of the U.S. that I could be going to do missionary service. But China was not really even an option, to be honest, and it was on their application, so you can put it down. But it was just really interesting. They didn't really have anything active at that time. So I applied for the program in faith, and let's now go to 2014. This is during my interview. This is in February of 2014. I got interviewed, and I saw the Lord work right from the interview. In the interview, as I was being asked different questions and going through the process, I was asked different questions, of course. But interestingly enough, the interviewers, the people that were interviewing me, they began to ask me about China. Out of the blue.
Wow.
They say, would you be interested in going to China? And I looked at them, I said, yeah, absolutely. And then one of the interviewers, it was so funny, I still never forget this, began to speak Chinese to me. She's like, can you speak Chinese? I was like, yeah, I can speak Chinese. And I replied to her in Mandarin. And so it was just a really interesting time seeing at that moment how God was working something that I couldn't even see. And so I went through the interview process, and when I say I didn't even see, it was that at that point in time, I didn't even know that there was a way that he was going to open a door for me to go to China. So I get accepted in April 1st of 2014. If you notice, I'm using a lot of dates, and the reason for that is because I journal. I journal a lot. I put very high importance in journaling the things that God does in my life and tracking what I do, tracking what God is doing, so I can follow him, so I can hear his voice. And that was something that I strove, and that was absolutely something that I strove to do with all of my heart at that time, and even now, to this day. But I got accepted into the missionary program on April 1st of 2017, and immediately I began to pray. I began to pray and pray about the placement site. Again, I didn't know where I was going to go. Even though I was being asked about China and being able to speak Chinese in my interview, it was not for sure. It was not a guarantee that I was going to be going to China. And so 6 days later, on April 7th of 2017, and I have it journaled, and I think the exact time was either 2:11 or 2:17 in the morning. I was in my room praying, and I was on my floor, and the Lord spoke to my heart as clear as day. I kid you not. He said these exact words. He said, Arnold, I want you to pray for China. And I said, but God, like, do you remember what happened to me and what, just this experience that I had and I lost out? And he spoke to me one more time, just one more time. And he said, Arnold, I want you to touch and agree with my will. And I sat there. I sat there on my floor and I just said, okay, God, I touch and agree with your will. I pray for China. And instantly, peace came. Peace came. And 3 months later, I got a confirmation letter through the missionary program that I was on my way to China.
Wow. I have so many questions. Number one, that was an awesome story, an awesome testimony of the timeline between the promise and the fulfillment of the promise. And I love that you detailed that with dates, because a lot of times people will hear from God or pray for something in January, and by February, because it hadn't appeared or came to fruition, they like, well, it must not be God's will, but we don't realize that God don't operate on our time. Period.
Right.
And I love, and I so love that, and people can learn so much from that, because it was years.
Yes. Oh,
it was
God,
years.
yes. Yes, ma'am.
And people don't, God, you said you was going to send me a husband, and it's February 2015, and because you're not dating anybody in June 2015, you think you're going to be single the rest of your life with 10 cats. No, that's not what it is. So, but in that time, you learn more language, I'm sure, because I think you said you continue to study it and so on and so forth. So you were better prepared, and I'm sure, years had passed. So there was definitely some maturity that happened and those things. So you were better prepared too, And I'm learning that because, Lord, God knows me and patience. I always say, if God wanted me to be patient, that would have been my first name. But me and patience is a constant battle, because I too am one of those people that tend to get frustrated when I know, and it just seems not to happen in Valencia's time.
Right.
And then I'll get frustrated and then have to breathe and go into prayer, meditation, throw some fasting in there and everything else just to get at peace with my timeline.
Right.
Amen.
Amen.
So you're
Amen. And I hear you, sister.
So you
yes,
end
indeed.
up in China. And was that the first time you had ever been when you went there for missions work? That was the first time you ever went to China?
Right. And let me say this. So I went to China through a missionary program, but they had a partnership with an organization there that was it was a Chinese organization, and it was through that Chinese organization that I served as a teacher. So I wasn't a missionary in China, but I was an English teacher there, and I'll just put this out there to be clear. It's illegal to proselytize in China. You can't share openly the gospel there, so you have to.
Right. Because I was going to ask about that too.
Right. So I didn't do that, but I went solely for the purpose, and not solely for the purpose, but primarily to work as an English teacher. And but yes, that was my first time going to China, and I still remember as I took flight on the day that I left to go. I remember leaving the Metropolitan Airport and crying my eyes out. I was crying my eyes out because,
like, Lord, what have I done?
Well, it wasn't that. No, it was actually tears of joy. It was tears of joy. It was God finally fulfilling the promise. I was like, God did it. God did it. Oh, my goodness. I'm feeling that right now. God did it. And I was just so happy. So happy. That's bringing tears to me.
At this moment. I could, that moment of the delivery on the promise is overwhelming, and anyone that has seen me speak or, even talk to me firsthand when I talk about things that I know I had no hand in, I just did what I was supposed to do. My eyes would get watery, and then I'll kind of throw it off and say, hold on, I'm about to have a moment, or, because it does get overwhelming, because even with writing, I've been writing since I was a little girl, and I just knew I was going to be a writer ever since I was a little girl. So if you think about that desire and that passion that was put into me then, but I was late. I think my first published book was in 2016. So I don't know how old. Wait, I'm 41 now, so minus 3 years. That's how old I was. So, if you think about that gift and that thing that was put in me as a little girl did not show up until I was in my late 30s. So, that's, like I said, that's a whole other show. You were the only African American where you lived at in China, correct?
Right, for a full year. I was the only African American teacher there, and I lived. Now, here's another side note. I lived in Ningxia, China, and so that's an area. And I'm trying to figure out how to say it, and I just put it to this way: you would find more foreigners, people from the States or Europe, in other parts of China, maybe like Beijing or Hong Kong, or I'll just put this one out there, Guangzhou. Guangzhou is also another one. That's more of the southern part of China, and then you have Beijing, of course, and Shanghai. You'll find more foreigners there than you would in Ningxia, China. And Ningxia, China is actually what they call an autonomous region. And so what's interesting about that is that this is an area where a minority group of China predominantly lives. And so, again, kind of backtracking a little bit, I said this, and it's kind of giving a comparison, or maybe kind of comparing the two a little bit. I said that Mandarin Chinese is the standard language of China, but there are other dialects. So in this region, or this autonomous region, most of the people in this area are not what you would call, because there's different minority groups. The most dominant minority group in China is what they call the Han people. And even in Chinese, Mandarin Chinese can also be pronounced as Han Yu, which means Mandarin. But in Ningxia area, I live predominantly with a minority group called the Hui people. And the Hui people are Muslims. They're known for their religious practices. They're Muslims. So I didn't know that they had Muslims in China. I thought everybody was Buddhist. And
Right.
So I didn't even know that. So that was very interesting. But also in this area, you won't find as many foreigners in that region that you would in other parts of China. So, definitely. I was the only black teacher in my city at that time for a full year. And, quite an experience for sure.
So I have so many questions. Okay. So being the only person that looked like you,
Mm-hmm.
how did you deal with that, and how did people react to you?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I have to say I had a great team. I had a great team there in that city. I mean, God orchestrated everything. So I had a great team. I had great team leaders. And let me just kind of say it this way. I came to that part of China. I came to China with one other team member from the same missionary program that I was a part of. But I also was there able to work with another organization as well. And so we partnered and we worked together. We were foreign teachers together. And I was able to get a lot of wisdom and a lot of advice from the people that had been there before me. And so I found myself, just going to the team leaders and asking them questions and being curious, just wanting to learn the environment, right? They know they've been there before you, so they can give you they can teach you, they can let you know what to expect, what to look out for. And so that was very helpful, definitely. But then along with that, I being the person I am, very outgoing, and let me back up. Actually, one of the things, and this is something I wrote down, one of the things that I remember being told was that I had to be aware that people in that area may say some things that's offensive.
Right.
They may say some offensive things. And I give you one example, especially being a black male, they may say some bad, terms. They may call me some things. And so I was told to be aware of that. But the reason for that was not because they wanted to be racist or anything like that. You have to remember, this was an area where most of these people have never seen foreigners, not just a black person, but foreigners in their lives. So the only thing they have, or the knowledge that they only most likely have about America, Europe, these other countries, is on television or on a cell phone.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? So with that, I had to keep all that in mind. So it was most likely was going to be out of ignorance that those things would have been said to me. And so I had to be aware of that and to I had to be aware. I'm laughing, but I'm thinking like, being black, some people, they calling me this and that. I'm not taking that, But you had to have some grace. You had to really think about what was going on, and so having that knowledge definitely prepared me for my interaction with the community, for sure.
That's a great way to look at it, because I think a lot of people of whatever, culture, race, or whatever else really don't always want the experience of where it's just them and nobody else looks like them, which is a tragedy in itself, because you may be the person to teach them about your race, so that way they know next time.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
That's not what you see on TV. When I went to Canada last year, in the area I went in Canada, there was not too many people of my color or anything close to it. And in fact, the event that I spoke at and went to, I was the only black person. So it wasn't just that I was the only black speaker. I was the only black person in the event, period. And and I know people were really uncomfortable. Like you could just kind of vibe and tell off people. So, me being who I am, when I got on the stage, I was like, in case you guys didn't guess, I'm the black one. So everybody just bust out laughing, and it kind of broke the ice or whatever, because who gets on stage and says that? But, I thought, it worked. I have several Canadian friends, and that's what I know. And a lot of people ask me, well, how did this feel? And how did that feel? And did this and that happen and everything else? And I loved it. If it wasn't so cold there. I would definitely stuff is definitely cheaper in Canada, and it's beautiful and everything. And I love standing out. And this way, I don't have to do anything; just be me. And you can't help but notice me, you know. So that may have been the only experience one-on-one they have had with a black female. I don't know, but you know, I provided them a great speech and some laughter, so I made it easier for the next one. That's how I look at things. So. That was so. You were in China for 2 years. Were you glad to come back?
Oh, repeat that question. When did I come back?
Well, were you glad to come back? Like, were you happy? Like, yes, I'm going back home.
You know, I think this word explains it very well. It was a bittersweet moment because. You have to know something about Chinese culture. It takes time, and this is within any culture, but even more so, I think this is to be true, that in the Chinese culture, it takes time. It takes time to build relationships. It takes time to build trust. It takes time to build friendships, and not just time, it takes consistency. At the same time, you have to be the same person that you are. You know, you can't put up one character one day and then put up another. You can't be wishy-washy. You have to be who you are. And so leaving China was definitely a bittersweet moment for me because I had just finished experiencing making friends from all parts of the city and all parts of China, really. And I say that humbly, but, I mean, it was amazing experience. I literally have pictures in my room of my experience in China, the students that I taught, the kids that I met, the friends that I made. I mean, it was just an incredible 2 years, and I would never trade that for anything. And so coming back home was definitely bitter, but it was also sweet in the fact that I didn't come home for a complete 2 years.
Right.
So it was something definitely awesome to have in that point of view because I was finally able to see my parents again. I was finally able to my family, my friends, and absolutely.
Are you longing to go back?
I do know, and I do strongly believe that it will happen again some point in the future. At this time, I feel like there are other things that the Lord is wanting me to do. And so it's funny, I always get the question, so Arnold, are you going back? I said, are you here? Are you here? Are you here now? Are you what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm here for now. I'm here for now. And so, yeah, that's the case for me right now.
I love that, and I love, to me, it's a great example, especially being, a young man, period, and then you add a young black man on top of it. A lot of times we don't, and this is just from what I see and know, we don't encourage each other as a culture to just, get out the box and do this and do that. Like, a vacation is more than just going to Florida. Go do, because literally, when I tell people I went to Canada, it's like, wow, you went to Canada. Canada is like, to me, up the road. It's we're still connected to the States. But that's one of the things I love with my son being in the military. He just got back from Germany. And, of course, he gets to travel and stuff. And I said, to me, my feelings is just like, getting your driver's license at a certain age is important, a passport should be important too.
Absolutely. I agree with that. If you can leave and just, visit another country, I would definitely encourage that for anybody that's thinking about it. Create a plan, though, too. Think about it, strategize it. I think that's also important because and I'm sure you share this all the time. Like, if you have a vision, if you have a goal, Create a strategy. Be organized about it and make it happen. It's possible. It's absolutely possible. Yeah.
Thank you for putting the period on all my sentences in my posts, because people underestimate the power of writing the vision and making it plain. They underestimate that, and because they get frustrated from the promise.
Right.
They get frustrated from that. And like I posted today about trees. Everybody, loves a good tree, but it started at a seed. No one sees the seed. And that's where the promise comes in, and you have to grow. A tree don't just go from seed to full-grown apple tree or oak tree or whatever the next day, but we get impatient. And then I'm not gonna write that vision anymore. Okay, well that's you. I'll wait to you and send you a postcard from wherever I'm at next.
I have to put this quote out if it's okay. There's a quote by Les Brown, and I love him because he's an awesome motivational speaker. And this is something I try to remind myself every time I get a little frustrated. And he says, and I think it came from Jim Rome, but this is something that you'll find in his speeches. He says, by the yard it's hard, but inch by inch, anything's inch, one step at a time.
So true. So true. But we got 4 minutes left. I think I asked 2 of the questions that was officially on my list of questions, which is all good. Arnold is now officially a part of the Define You Radio family, so he will definitely be back. But before we go, I definitely want to touch on really quick about you voice acting. If you guys can't tell by his great voice, I was just like, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. So how did you get into that? Did somebody say, hey, you have a great voice, you should be a voice actor? How did that go?
Well, it's funny, no one really actually has come to me and said you have a great voice. Actually, my desire and interest in voice acting really has come as a result of me just really kids. I work with kids. When I came back home from China, I also had an experience to teach at a Chinese church here in Brooklyn, New York, and I taught Chinese kids. So I love kids. I love working with kids, and so just the point with voice acting, I don't know. I just think about these different TV shows that you grow up when grow up watching. I think this is funny, but I think I'm not the only one who saw it. But Dora the Explorer, all these different TV shows when I was young. I mean, talking 2001, 1999. Right, all that during that time, and you had a lot of shows that really made an impact. PBS Kids, oh my gosh, Arthur, right? I'm sure we can sing the song. They had a very positive message and a very positive impact on my life, and so it's for that reason that I also have an interest in pursuing that, because it is. I like the idea of being able to be a part of something for kids at a very young age. I'm talking about starting them young, just like the book of Proverbs say, that if you train them up in the way of the Lord, that when they get old, they shall not depart. Hey, absolutely. Being able to be that voice for kids so that they can know that whatever circumstance they're in, it don't matter if they come from a broken home. Hey, it don't matter what type of situation they come from, that there's hope. Oh, my goodness. I'm getting excited. But it's real. It's so real. It's so real.
Like I said, there's going to have to definitely be a part 2, because I definitely want to, talk about your faith and staying faithful through, in these days and times where, it's easier, it's so much easier to do wrong than to do right. It's so much easier to follow the crowd than to be different, and that's one of the things I definitely love about you from the moment we met. It was just so like such a great experience to where when me and my friend, who I know is listening, you know, I talked about you, and I know y'all had a conversation about me, which, you know, life works that way.
Yeah.
But you're such a dynamic and interesting young man, and I love that you're out there just doing different. Like just doing different, because a lot of times people will say do different and they're doing the same thing. You know? And I especially love that you did talk about the moment from the promise to the actual fulfillment of the promise. So definitely thank you for that, because you spoke some words to me just then. God is always reminding me to be patient, which has been a daily journey. Yes. I'm learning.
Yeah. I'm still learning. All of us are still learning. Absolutely. Wow.
Well, Mr. Arnold Brown, which is so funny, me saying Mr., because you are younger than me. You are younger than me.
Yes,
but, you know, Mr. is a term of respect. I absolutely have loved having you on the show. And if someone in the audience wants to connect with you, find out more about you, possibly have you voice act a project they're doing or something of that nature, what is the best way that they can contact you and connect with you?
Well, definitely the first thing that comes to mind is Instagram. If you want to reach me on Instagram, you can go to the search box, of course, and type in Arnold Brown. The same picture that you see from this podcast that I put as my display picture is the same picture you should find if you were to search my name on Instagram. So, again, my name, complete name, Arnold Brown, and my username for that Instagram account is it should be AB, Teach Mandarin, or A Brown, Teach Mandarin. I'm very active on Instagram, and so if you would love to connect with me, you can do that as well. But you can also email me at brown.prince95@yahoo.com. Again, that's brown.prince, like the singer, 95 at yahoo.com.
Yay! Wait, 95 because that's when you were born?
No, I was actually born in 91. I don't know. I created
okay.
Yeah,
because I knew you were young. I was like 95. You know, but guys, Arnold, thank you so much. It has definitely been a learning experience. I definitely look forward to having you back on so we can talk about, you know, faith. How was it, you know, in China, being a person of faith? How, you know, how was that experience in China where, you know, that's not their thing, you know? So we'll definitely have you back on. It has been a great show. You are awesome. I definitely will stay connected with you, of course.
Awesome.
And thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay.
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, this has been a pleasure and a complete honor. So I want to thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're off. You're completely. There are no words. You're a trailblazer, and God made you that way for a reason. So we'll definitely stay connected. With that being said, pens and papers down, class is officially over. Make sure you are connected with tonight's guest, whose information will be posted on Define You Radio's Facebook page, and you got to connect with him also on IG, Instagram, for those of us 40 and up, in case you're not on there. Make sure you're connected with the show. Until next time, remember, your past doesn't define you. It gives you definition, and it's up to you what you do with that. Have a great night, and I will see you guys not next week because it's my anniversary, like Tony says. So you're going to have to listen to one of the older shows, but we'll be back live in 2 weeks. Y'all have a great night. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to Define You Radio. Make sure you connect with the show at www.defineyouradio.com. Pens and papers down. Class dismissed.
Panera now delivers, so you can order good, clean food right to your office, or door, or porch, or backyard, or front yard, or apartment, or dorm, or castle, or shop, or worksite, or wherever Panera delivers. For lunch, dinner, and everywhere in between. Click the banner to order or visit PaneraBread.com. Participating locations only. Panera. Food as it should be.
McDonald's new $1, $2, $3 menu has breakfast, which means you can get the sausage burrito for $1, a sausage McGriddles for $2, and the sausage McMuffin with egg for $3. Or, as Jill likes to call it, the
I burnt the toast, set off the smoke detector, and filled the apartment with smoke meal.
More like the I can't believe you did that again meal.
Build whatever breakfast you want with McDonald's new $1, $2, $3 menu. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.